discuss, or whether you're hoping to get out of listening to the session?
So the thing is that we are in quality, we are engaging the frontline in daily problem solving. And that's where we have huddle boards created for them to engage on a daily basis for 15 minutes. That they huddle. There is an element of recognitions and celebrations as a part of that huddle, and that is a daily activity that we engage the frontline in, and that's where we want to be like a people first approach. We take care of the people, and people take care of the residents and the patients. So I think that's where we would want to see of how we can, spread that the whole culture of kindness and recognition and celebration, and have that as a part of an ingrained kind of an thing that they're always thinking about, and it's not like a task that they have to do, but it's natural, and it's willingly they come forward and help.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's brilliant. Rosie, what drew you to the session today, and what would you like to kind of take away?
I think what drew me was around the kindness and positivity angle. Obviously working in the ambulance service and on the kind of front line, not that I work directly on the front line, but the staff that work on the front line, I think everybody's feeling pretty exhausted, and we're doing a lot as a trust to support our staff with well-being and mental health, and this just seemed like another kind of angle, really. I always try and be kind, but I think the positivity, might be a good thing as well. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom at the moment, and so some positivity, I think, may well be useful.
Oh, do you know, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, because the material we put together and the sessions we deliver was a deliberate thing to put positivity and kindness together, and it's lovely to get feedback to say actually that's probably a good thing to do. A lot of people talk about both those things, but maybe in a isolation. But the unique thing about what we deliver is that I combine the two. And the material we share with people is basically based on three things, really. There's the kindness stuff, there's the positive psychology stuff, but we also introduce some concept of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and we don't tell people we do that. It's just some of the content we put out. If people have ever trained in NLP, they'll recognize it. So no, that's brilliant. So Julie, I know you can't hear us, you can hear us, but you can't see us or speak to us. So put in the chat, Julie, just give us a message about what you'd like to, oh, I think you're doing it already. Jen, if you want to have a little look there, or Joe in the chat, and see what Julie's saying she'd like to get from the session. And a massive welcome to James. James has come up on the camera. It's lovely to see you, James. And where are you today? And
yeah, hi. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I really wanted to drop in earlier, but I've unfortunately had back-to-back meetings. But TAP, who I represent, Thank and Praise, is hopefully positivity and kindness personified. So hopefully I'm in the right group. So I'm James, director of TAP. We're a social enterprise. We were set up in January 2019, which I think surprised a lot of people, because I think most people feel that we must have been a pandemic response unit. But actually, our founders realized that there was probably a need for greater recognition and appreciation of care and health workers forever. It's not just over the last couple of years. The last couple of years have maybe amplified that. But yeah, so I'm really pleased to join this group. I saw that it kicked off this morning, but hopefully I'm not too late to get involved. And of course, this is all part of a kickstart, isn't it, Paul, I guess, to create a new kindness and positivity network, which I would love to be part of.
Oh, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for checking us out and coming along. So no, so me and Joe, we've just been using the time today to allow people to come in and have a chat about some of the kindness and positivity stuff. We've got a few ideas that will be commonly known to people, really, and But what we wanted to do is to introduce some new concepts to people that probably haven't studied positive psychology or kindness or NLP. So we want to share some key ideas that they can take away and test out. We've deliberately held off launching the Kindness and Positivity Network until today because we wanted it to be part of the Fab Change Day. And that's come about because we've done a few of these sessions and people have said to us, we'd love to create a forum for meeting like-minded people to share a bit more about the content and the science, but in a very simple way that we can use. But then also maybe look to, if we really like this concept of building a culture of kindness and positivity, how can we do that? So we've been testing some stuff out around creating kindness and positivity coaches who can share the material that we'll show you briefly today. We won't go into anything in a big detail, but just to give you show you some of the stuff we're doing, and also then help people test some of those ideas out, and then also create virtual platforms on, hopefully after New Year or whatever, real events, live events where people can come together. So one of our ambitions would be, for instance, to have a Fab Festival of Kindness and Positivity, whereby we can have an international, now that we've got Summit on the call now from Canada, we can have an international Fab Festival of Kindness and Positivity, where we can have people come and talk about their experience of using some of these approaches and learn and share from each other in terms of what they've tested out. And we kind of love the link between that and Fab stuff, because like Danny mentioned earlier, the whole concept of the Fab Academy is to share ideas that have innovative ideas from the shop floor with other people on the shop floor, who then take those ideas and test them out. They make them better, and then they come back to the community and reshare them. So we end up with this continuous improvement cycle going on, and it's something. I'm with the National Emergency Care Improvement Sport Team, and we love that idea. We see sustainable improvement coming from that. But we just love it, and we've been really fortunate today because coincidentally NHS England have done a health and wellbeing webinar, and it's I think we just put that out at 2 o'clock, and we've had virtually 1,000 people join that session and hear the key messages that we've been putting out here today, but also to promote Fab Academy. So we've reached 1,000 people we wouldn't normally have reached. So we're really pleased bits about that. So, but James, thank you so much for joining.
No, pleasure, and thanks for that update. It's really useful to hear your direction of travel. Just to say maybe a couple of thoughts. So I mean, TAP, for those who don't know, Thank and Praise is a digital thanking platform. It does what it says on the tin. It allows people, members of the public, to easily, quickly, safely, securely say thanks to key workers in health and social care, and we do that through our website and through a TAP app. What we've realised, Paul and others on the video call today, is that we realised that simply presenting organisations with the digital thanking platform free of charge to use was actually only part of the journey. And we've realized that in order to really transform things, we had to become almost part of a movement. So we've been working with a collective of organizations, I guess similar to ours, to promote kindness and promote positivity, and move away from a world of, I guess, overt constructive feedback / negative feedback on a regular basis, and perhaps a lot more regular positive feedback. And not just clap for care a week, and not just once a month or once a year, but daily and regularly. And our platform is there to hopefully facilitate that.
Do you know, fantastic stuff. I mean that's in itself a Fab initiative, isn't it? It's something that we people often write in and create pages about and share those things. And
the Fab team have been brilliant in sharing the TAP story over the last year or so. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, what that links to, guys, is one of the most powerful principles in positive psychology called attitude of gratitude. And it's absolutely critical to really help and get the best out of people. but also yourself, and recognizing, you know, the things that you're grateful for, and both, you know, personally, relationships, families, friends, but also achievements. And we've introduced something now where within our team, a little team that we call cheer for peers, where people do write in and say, you know, how great somebody's been at doing X, Y, Z, and that's read out across the whole organisation. And it's a bit of a shout out to colleagues, and it's cheer for peers. It's, you know, and then there is a little winner, but it's not the winning, is it? It's basically the fact that somebody's taken the time to write in and say how great that person's been, and it affects everybody in a positive way, because then the whole concept of spontaneous trait transference kicks in, and people feel good about the person that's nominated and been nominated, and that gives everybody a feeling of, oh my gosh, that's really good. So it has this lovely emotional kind of ripple effect, you know, across your teams. It's a lovely thing to do. Jen, do you want to just, what's Julie putting in the chat there for us? Do you want to read out anything that we've got from
Julie? She had to drop off, actually. She said she's gutted that she's had to be called away, but has given her email so we can add it to the list to send information to after.
Lovely, brilliant. So that's Julie was on the front line, actually on duty in the office when she tried to join us, wasn't she? So she's actually off working clinically today. So guys, what I'd like to do is I won't share every single slide we've got, but I just want to start by sharing one slide. This is something we've created as part of our kindness and positivity thing way back when we started a couple of years ago, probably longer now, actually 3 years ago maybe. And it's based on a principle of a commitment, a kindness commitment in your workplace. So when we talk to people and we coach people, we talk about creating kindness commitments. And particularly if you're leaders of organizations, the concept is that if we take the view that every patient service user deserves the quality of care we'd expect for ourselves and our family, then in order for that to happen, oh, I'm getting an echo. That, I think it's lovely. Thanks, guys. Yeah. So in order for that to happen, the research tells us that we need to create kind, positive, and supportive environments where our teams can be at their best. So this was a photograph we took at a rapid improvement event, and literally without exception, everybody's feet is off the ground. And you can see how kind of joyful these guys are here. So I'll just stop sharing that one. Oh, we've got Roy back. Hi, Roy. So did everybody manage to see the ambulance crews jumping for joy? They were literally off the ground, right? Okay. So that was a little bit of great place to work. And the concept behind that is, God forbid if we needed the services of an emergency ambulance crew today, how confident would you feel that you'd receive excellent quality of care from any of those people there? And the chances are, if you're looking at people who are, you know, working within the same madness that we all face today with unprecedented pressures in the NHS and all the things Roy writes about, to be able to create a kind of positive and supportive culture where people feel they can perform at their best is the secret to providing an environment where we can help people deliver the quality of service we'd want for ourselves and our family. And so we kind of took that concept and worked it back, really. And what we've been doing is looking at the reverse side of the civility saves lives kind of discussion, really, whereby we thought, well, we all appreciate that kindness, being kind, is a pretty nice thing to do, really. And being on the end of an act of kindness can often make our day. But the reality is, whilst that is true, actually a conscious decision to be kind is 1,000 times more powerful than that. And when we do the big sessions and stuff, and we teach people some of the concepts of it, what that then links to is it's a sequence of events that happen subconsciously by one conscious act. So the conscious act of saying, I choose to be kind today. I choose to be as kind as possible to people I meet. That act, that conscious act, creates a chemical reaction in our brains, basically. And we get the release of kindness and happiness hormones, and particularly serotonin. And the release of that causes us to feel more confident about ourselves. That then raises our self-esteem. That then helps us feel like we can actually tackle things, set positive goals, make progress on goals. And actually, that chain reaction leads to significant increase in personal and professional success, all from a conscious decision to be kind. It's a chain reaction. It's not under our direct control, other than the point about making a conscious decision to be kind. So we can see that actually, if we want to be successful personally and as leaders, and our teams to be as successful as possible, kindness is critical to that. In fact, it's probably the most important trait we could wish ourselves and our leaders to have, because everything flows from that. Now, the reverse is true. If we choose to be a mood hoover, either by conscious decision or by default, be miserable, moan at people, find everything at fault rather than find everything that's good, and pull people down, then the reverse is true. We still have a very powerful effect, but it's a negative impact, and we all impact people, don't we? So the only question about our impact is it a positive thing or is it a negative thing? So a conscious decision to be kind is the first starting point for us as individuals being our best selves and helping others to do so. And it is a chain reaction that kicks off. Now, acts of kindness is interesting, because acts of kindness, there's a lovely case study whereby it's one of a number of case studies that we use, but it's a lovely one because there was a Starbucks drive-through. Just checking me. Yeah, lovely. So there's a Starbucks drive-through case study whereby the team leader on the drive-through noticed that the person who was paying for their drink asked to pay for the drink of the car behind them. And this one particular team leader was into be your best self and positive psychology and be kind. So they thought that what they'd do as an experiment would to count how long that act of kindness lasted for. Well, buying that one drink lasted for 2.5 hours before it stopped. Now, whilst we say it's nice to be kind, what most people don't appreciate is how contagious kindness is. And through something called hypodiatic spread, that basically is jargon for saying your ability to affect the emotional state of people you never meet. It's a scientific, psychological constant, which means it's always present, whether we like it or not. And that's what's happened at Starbucks. Somebody's bought the car behind a drink, and the person behind them's bought the car behind them a drink, and that lasted for 2.5 hours. The estimate was that hit 150 drivers. Hypodiatic spread. Now, that was a random act of kindness, and it was interesting because one of the speakers that was on the NHS England webinar an hour ago said, I don't believe in random acts of kindness. I think every act of kindness is a deliberate act. So, and you could say, well, actually, yeah, that's a really good point, because driver number one made the decision to buy the car behind a coffee, and then 149 other cars did the same before it stopped. And you'll guarantee why it stopped. It came on a mood hoover and said, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm not accepting charity, and I'm not going to pay charity for anybody else. But it just shows you how contagious kindness is. And this is why we come to the thing around kindness is 1,000 times more impacting than you would realize. Now, of course, guys, the reverse is true. So the mood hoovers still have that degree of impact. And if I take a simple calculation using hypodiatic spread, if we bump into a random 20 people a day and we smile, or we say nice things about them, or we buy them a coffee, or we tell them how great they're doing their job, 20 people a day, that could be at home, at work, in the supermarket, in the gym. They go away and they talk to 20 random people, and their 20 random people go away and talk to another 20 random people. What's just happened there is, if that event was positive, 8,000 people have had a 10% uplift in their emotional state. That's what the research tells us. And it works for 3 ripples. It doesn't work for any more than that. It dies off the edge of the cliff, and it's about 1 to 3% emotional uplift. But for 3 points of separation, as they call it, you talk to 20 people, 20 people talk to 20 people, they talk to 20 people. It's 8,000 people get a 10% uplift in their emotional state. So if you smile at 20 people, you have just given 8,000 people a 10% uplift in how they feel. 8,000 people. Now, it'd be lovely to think, well, how many people have interacted with Fab Change 21? And if they randomly told 20 people about their great experience, and their 20 people randomly told 20 more people of their great experience, how many people have had a positive emotional uplift through hypodiatic spread from Fab Change Day 21? It'll be into millions. Now, that's the real impact of the event and the social movement. Now, of course, the reason why we kind of share this with people is because we say to them, kindness rule number 1, guys, be aware of your impact. Because if you're kind and you're consciously kind, that's the life you can be living in terms of all these other people you will never meet. And that's why it's a hypodiatic spread. It's the concept that you are changing the emotional state of people you will never meet. And the reverse is true. So the mood hoovers and the toxic people, they still impact 8,000 people, but in a negative way. They give 8,000 people a 10% emotional dive in their state. And where we as leaders, or when we see leaders behaving in positive ways, the point about we all impact people in different ways, positive or negative. So, you know, the likes of Roy through the Institute of Healthcare Manage, and John, and people that are working in that environment will see leaders working at very senior levels they might have a handful of direct reports, but actually they're responsible and they can impact the emotional state of several thousands of people. You know, we'll often see Roy talking to people that work in the UK NHS system, who might be the chief exec or in an executive director role, with millions of people that fall under that hierarchy. So what we're now talking about, if you're a very, very, very senior leader, it's even more critical to be aware of your impact from a kindness and positivity point of view. Now, what we've worked out through NHS Great Place to Work is, if you've got certain people, it's a colleague I work with a lot called Nikki Pointer from Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells. She's a kindness and positivity coach, one of our first coaches that we created, site manager down in Tunbridge Wells Hospital, piloted our Great Place to Work concept for us. Whilst everybody in the NHS is grappling to keep staff, Nikki's got a list of people that are waiting to join because of the culture and the kindness and positivity that she creates as the leader. So what we try and do in terms of a kindness a kindness plan, if you like, or a kindness commitment in the work environment is, it doesn't matter where you sit in the organisation. If you are a kind, positive, supportive person and you positively infect the people around you, let's rattle you up the ranks as high as your capabilities allow. Because instead of positively impacting three people, we can get you positively impacting 3,000 people. And then hypodiatic spread kicks in, and those 3,000 people will impact 20 people each, and the whole thing kicks in. So it's a critical thing for us, kindness and positivity with regard to that. Another little thing we share with people is a concept called spontaneous trait transference. And this is another psychological constant, because the researchers, the academics in positive psychology, declare that it's always with us, it's always there, and it's not within our direct control. So spontaneous trait transference works like this. Just imagine, for instance, Joe wasn't here. Joe was off recovering from COVID jabs or flu jabs or whatever and things like that, bless her. And I jumped on and said, you know what, I met this great girl yesterday. We had a great conversation around kindness positivity. We actually felt it was fate that brought us together yesterday, wasn't it? So she's not here today for whatever reason, but I tell you how great she is, and we've got all this ambition to do some great stuff about helping people be their best selves by adopting the principles of kindness and positivity. You guys psychologically will think, well, that's a really nice thing to say about somebody. Subconsciously, your brains will be going, that Paul is quite a nice guy, really, isn't he? He's saying nice things about somebody he's never really met before. He's recognizing the value she brings and he's calling it out. And actually, he might be the kind of guy I'd like to work with or do stuff with. That happens subconsciously. Right. Now, what's happened there is, without conscious thought, your brain has listened to what I'm saying about Joe. I'm describing traits that she has and how she's come across and spoken about and things like that. So they're the traits. But subconsciously, in an instant, without conscious control, your brain has made a judgment about those traits and what I'm saying. And it's also made a secondary judgment about me. And that judgment tends to be, I'm good, I'm bad, or I'm ugly, basically, or a mix of all three, or whatever it is. Now, that's spontaneous trait transference. And the concept is, how I talk about people is how you judge me. Just think back to the last time you heard somebody speaking ill about somebody, berating somebody in public. How did you feel in that regard? You almost felt like they were directing the words at you. You were thinking, I wouldn't like to be on the end of that. That's not very kind, is it? And actually, if they're talking about that person in that way, what are they going to say about me behind my back? So what your brain has done there is taken the trait, taken what you're saying about them. It's made a judgment about, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And then if it's good or bad, it actually attaches it to the individual that's saying that message. Spontaneous trait transference. And what we say to people in the sessions, guys, is there's nothing you can do about it. It's constantly there. You can choose to ignore it, but it will always act on you. It will always act on you. So being aware of your impact is the double-sided coin for us. It's the concept of hypodiatic spread, and to know that it's not just the person in front of you or the person that's listed, the group of people in front of you you're impacting. It's several others more, but also what you're saying, they are attributing back to you psychologically. That's the science behind being aware of your impact. It's one of the traits that we kind of spend quite a bit of time looking at with groups and teams and things. If we got our way, we talk to people about these concepts on induction, just so everybody got an idea about, you coming into our organisation, guys. We've looked at the research around what provides the kind of care we'd expect for ourselves and our families and if we needed the service. And we completely appreciate the link between getting what the quality care we'd want for ourselves and our families is directly attributable to how kind and positive people are. That's the thing. And using a little bit of the science. Now, there's another little thing we share with people, which is it's probably going to give you a headache, so we're not going to talk about it in detail, but we can have people reaching for the paracetamol at this point. And I'm talking about what determines our outcome. What determines our results? Well, it's our behaviours, isn't it? It's what we do. It's the action we take or the action we don't take. So you think, okay, then, so where are we going with this? Well, the idea is, of course, if the outcome we want is whatever it is, providing a kind of service we want for ourselves and our family, achieving our potential, by the way, 90% of us fail to reach 50% of our potential. If you believe what's written in the positive psychology literature, 90% of us underachieve by 50%. And that's largely down to a couple of things. Not having goals set and high fear of failure. Well, it's interesting. But anyway, so if our outcomes are led by our behaviours, the question then is, isn't it, what drives our behaviours? Well, it's our thoughts. So then the question is, okay, if how we think determines what we do, and what we do determines our outcome, our results, what we get, what we don't get, then we can throw into a mix that we can determine the outcome of most everything that comes our way. And I'll show you how that links. So it links to the idea that our thoughts then are driven by the inputs to our minds that come to us through our five senses, seven senses or whatever it is. So it's the input to our minds that create our thoughts create our behaviours create our outcomes. So what drives the inputs to our minds? Oh, Joe, are you typing away there, Joe? They're putting stuff in the chat. I'm going to get you to read them out though in a minute, Joe. So what drives the input to our minds then? And this is the bit around positive psychology and NLP and stuff. Well, it's what we focus on. Have you ever heard the concept about you get more of what you focus on? There's a scientific reason for that. So how that works is through a concept called reticular activating system. So it's a RAS. It's called a reticular activating system in our brain, and basically it's a filter. So we get hit with 20 million bits of information a second, depending on what you read. It's a huge amount of information. It's about 20 million bits of information. Well, we can only process 5,000. So how do we get from that big number to a smaller number? Well, it's through this filter in the back of our brains called reticular activating system. But who makes the decision then? How do we get from that big number to the little number? Who decides what gets through the filter? Well, the answer is you. What your subconscious brain does is it notices what you think about most. And what you think about most gets written down in an email and sent to this filter. And it will go, we've noticed that James has been thinking about a lot of stuff lately, but these are the 3 things he's thought about every day. So the filter will go, thank you for that. We're going to make sure that any bit of information that hits James out of that big multi-million sum, we're going to just cream off things that relate to the 3 things James has thought about most over the last week, and we're going to feed it up on a plate. And that's why you get more of what you focus on, because your subconscious mind thinks it's important to you, and therefore it will filter it into your brain, filter the rest of the stuff away from your brain, and it will bring it to your conscious awareness, which is the bit about serving it up on a plate. Brings it to conscious awareness. That's the input that drives how you feel, that drives your behavior, that drives your outcome. But that's how you get the inputs, because all the stuff that's hitting you. So if Samit is standing next to James, they're going to be exposed to the same environment, the same information, impulses. But how they see their world will be completely different because of what they think is the most important to them. Now, you might think that the RAS, reticular activating system, is quite a clever thing to be able to do that. But I'll let you into a secret. It's not that clever. It's not that clever. Because whilst it does a good job at filtering things out that it thinks are important to you, it doesn't know the things that serve you versus the things that hurt you. People think about things that they're worried about, that they're stressed about. What we worry about most of the time, thankfully, doesn't come to reality, but we spend a lot of time thinking about it. So the problem with that is that if you worry about things that don't serve you and hurt you emotionally or cause you to be more anxious or more depressed or more stressed or not perform at your best, if you keep thinking about that, you're just going to get a lot more of it. And there's not a thing in the world you can do about it. Well, almost. You're on an automatic pilot. You're going to that destination according to your brain. It's like a sat nav in your car. If you tap in a destination in your sat nav and you follow it, you're going to get there. That's what your subconscious mind's doing for you. So one of the things we teach about is being kind to yourself and being aware of your own thoughts in terms of do they serve you or not. So the way to crack that is to think about this big concept that you're going to reach for the paracetamol for. Our thoughts aren't real. They're not real. However, it's through thought that we create our reality. Nothing can happen in real life unless we think about it first. Nothing. But our thoughts aren't real. And that's why it's the science around the loop. They call it the cognitive triangle, but that's in clinical psychology. But in positive psychology, it's more of a cognitive square. And that's where the input to your mind triggers your thoughts. Thoughts are how you feel. They trigger your feelings. Feelings dictate your behaviors. Your behaviors dictate your outcomes. So if you focus on things that serve you, they're positive. You take an approach that you're dealing with tricky situations, you're dealing with unprecedented pressures and problems, as is everybody else, at this, where we are with pandemics and things. But by being kind and positive, you can take a 200% more success rate at dealing with those same issues than people who take a negative approach to them. Because by being positive and saying, I can't solve every problem, but I can make the world a better place by doing these 3 things in my area, it makes you more resourceful. It opens your art of the possible section in your brain up. So you're getting to creative problem solving mode. From a psychological point of view, you move from a closed down filtered position to an open filter position to say, show me everything that can help me move forward with this problem. And then I'm going to test it to see if it does allow us to move forward with the problem. So it's a pretty big idea. So our thoughts aren't real, but our reality comes from our thoughts. And that's why this whole thing about being kind to yourself and being kind to others. And when we talk about the sessions and support people with the coaching and stuff, that's how we chunk it down. Be kind to yourself first, get yourself sorted, then be kind to others. Being kind to yourself is being aware of your own impact, but being aware of the thoughts that serve you and don't serve you, and being able to replace and reframe those thoughts that don't serve you into thoughts that do serve you better. And by you being the kind of person you want others to be and all that stuff, behavior breeds behavior, then you will then cause that hypodiatic spread where you're going to get other people to believe that the fact that it's rubbish, but you're proactively, positively moving things forward, they'll believe they can do the same. So you're creating agency then. You're creating a belief that people can do something to make things better. And it all comes from the conscious decision to be kind. That's the starting point. Because in order to do a lot of the stuff we've spoken about, guys, you've got to have a belief. In order to get the belief, you've got to think and feel that you can make things different if you're not getting the outcomes you are hoping to get personally, professionally, whatever. But in order for that to happen, you now realise, of course, that what you let in through your filter will determine that. Joe, do you want to just shout out some of the stuff you've been putting in the chat?
Yeah, very happy to. So I'll go up. So really, my chat pros has just been following your excellent presentation, Paul. It's just really inspiring to hear you speak. And I'm just agreeing really with what you've been saying. So the first thing I said was that, in terms of learning about the neurophysiology of kindness and recognizing there is actually a chemical reaction through the active kind, being the act of being kind, actually triggers the same pathways in terms of neurotransmitters as well-being and joy. So there is a sort of a reward for active kindness, but also, as you say, then that pays it forwards into so many other thousands of iterations of that same response. And I was just commenting about, you've raised all of these, but conversely, when leaders are unhelpfully negative or critical or gossiping, I think probably should go into that space. It does, like you say, have a very negative reflection on them as a person, and it breeds a distrust of that person, because, like you say, you worry what they're going to say about you in a space where you're not there. So that, that definitely doesn't help in terms of fostering a kind, open, positive culture. And I think from following that, what you said about building leaders who embrace kindness and demonstrate kindness and live this quality and think it's important as an objective for a trust or a service or whatever they are leading, those are the sorts of people that are going to, breed that culture within their space, but also help to reinforce that as something that we want in healthcare and in other industries. And I think potentially in the past, healthcare hasn't been focused on these sort of soft and fluffy principles. They've been very much focused on health outcomes. And I think we've missed the care portion of that. And unfortunately, now we're reaping the benefits of not thinking about health and care and thinking about a culture of kindness, an open, transparent culture, and embracing that as a quality marker is a key thing, which is probably a paradigm shift in healthcare, especially in the UK. And I'd say that things like, the CQC, understanding that kindness as a culture is very important because people care about what is measured. So if that becomes something that is measured by the CQC or by other regulatory bodies, that will be something that trusts care about. Equally, having it on trust objective and board meetings, those types of things become what what leaders care about, because it's something that is measured and talked about as a priority for the organisation. And just on the measurement point, the last thing I said was that, in terms of measuring kindness, I think there is a risk of it being a tick box. Are you kind? Like on the staff survey, do you feel like you're supported? Tick. That doesn't really do anything. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change culture. So it's much more around sort of, I suppose, the NHS Horizons type work and this collaborative I mentioned above that Bob runs around thinking about how we measure this in a meaningful way that's sustainable to build these cultures. And a lot of it comes around the sort of emotional impact of stories, capturing those and valuing those and sharing those widely. And I think like some of the work at NHS England at the moment is around building a what matters to you sort of central body of people. And I really like the what matters to you movement. I think it speaks to this critically, as in we ask what matters and we listen and hear, and then we try and do what matters. And if we can't do, we explain why we can't do it. And that doesn't just involve patients, that absolutely involves probably more importantly staff. And I think some of the work going on centrally around this piece is going to be vital in the coming years in terms of how we measure our performance as organisations, and then how that obviously inevitably affects our performance with our patients. That's the stuff that was in the chat.
That's fantastic. No, that's really inspiring. Bless you for that. It's true. And do you know what? I'd love to, the CQC inspections and the regulation side of it. The literature tells us the way we operate regulation in the NHS isn't evidence-based to work in any other sector ever. So why would it work in the NHS? So, and I think with the chief executive CQC deciding not to be part of that, Samit, that's our national regulator for healthcare, the Care Quality Commission. Even the chief executive of that organisation said, if what we do was going to bring improvement sustainably across the system, it would have done it by now. I'll see you later, and walked without a job to go to. So I think that culture is and one of the things that shocked me about 18 months ago, I was listening to Jeremy Vine, a Radio 2 presenter, on his show, and he had a workforce person on there, and he asked him which sector he was most worried about in terms of sustainable workforce in the UK, and he said, without doubt, the British National Health Service. And he said, really, why is that? And he said, well, I'll tell you something. He said, if the National Health Service recruited every single school leaver for 5 consecutive years, it still wouldn't be able to fill its vacancy rate. Now, that means we've got to convince people who work in other sectors to join the NHS, either from the UK or from abroad. But when it comes down to it, people tend to work in environments where they feel valued and supported to reach their potential. And very often, again, we say to people in our sessions, the research around human resources tells us that the number varies, but people are generally saying about 60% of people leave their boss, not their job. It's not the job they dislike, it's the people they work with is the issue. So if you put those kind of 3 things together, that builds the case for kindness and positivity even more than we ever. And it was the first thing Samit said when he joined. He said, we've got this link here. We know what we want to deliver in terms of our service. And we've made this link to culture and kindness and positivity. And then we're on a journey to make sure we put some stuff in place to actually get that embedded and do some things that we know if we've got a kind of positive workforce where people genuinely look forward to coming to work and working with us. They believe they can be their best selves at work. They believe that we want to get them to their potential. You're going to have them forever. And not only are you going to have them, they're going to go away and tell 20 of their mates to come and work for you. And it's like when Nikki Pointer was doing Great Place to Work for us, a lot of her wards were having to hire expensive interim staff to cover essential vacancies that they couldn't recruit to. Same organisation, same group of patients. Even the chief executive came to Nikki's ward and worked as on his day off and worked as a clinical support worker just so he could soak up the positivity and kindness culture on Nikki's ward. And then he went away and he launched a whole hospital-wide campaign around that kind of kindness, positivity, interaction. So honestly believe that is the trick of it. That is the absolute trick of it. If we can be openly kind and positive about facing challenges in a realistic way, helping people be their best selves, being open to creative problem solving and tests of change around unprecedented, difficult issues, and valuing people in that kind of way. I think it's the number one thing. I don't care how clever somebody is or what their badge says on their job title or whatever it is. If they're nasty to me, if they're mean to me, I don't want to be around them. I just don't want to be around them. But if they're kind and they're supportive, and when things are at their worst, they're with me, so it's not all my problem on my shoulders. Years ago, I came from Rose's sector. I grew up through the ambulance service in my health service career, and one of my roles was to be a leader in the emergency operations centre where all the emergency calls come in. And there's one of us on duty 24 hours a day. And when things were very, very difficult and we got no resources to send to any calls and we've got emergency calls outstanding, we had one leader who was the chief executive who said we literally had a red phone on the desk, on the dispatch desk, and we had to pick it up and talk to him within 3 rings or we were for the high jump. And then we had another leader who was the director of emergency care, who was our boss, Andy. And Andy had come down. The first thing he'd do is come in with a tray or 2 coffees, right? Biscuits. I'm talking status 0, mayhem, treble nines coming out of all over the place. We didn't know what to do next. And then he'd turn around, he'd step back and he'd stand behind us and he'd say, what are you struggling with? What do you need help with? Now, Andy was the reverse leader. Andy saw his role, his act of kindness was to help us to do our jobs as well as we could in that situation. The chief executive would make us pick the red phone up within 3 rings, and it was direct to his desk. The first thing he'd tell us was, he'd ask us for a situation report, what was going on. We didn't have time to tell him. We were trying to deal with it. The second thing was, he'd say our current level of performance was untenable and we had better pull our socks up. And then he'd slam the phone down. One day, we actually knocked the lock off on the control room door because we knew he was so furious. He said he was coming down to sort us out. So we locked him out. He went nuts. He went absolutely nuts. He got hold of our boss and he said, how dare they lock me out of my own building? And our boss, Andy, turned around and said, he said to Andy, get me in that building immediately. Get me into that control room immediately. And Andy turned around and said, Roger, you'll get in that control room when the senior duty officer said it's safe for you to go in and not before. Because you're not part of the solution. You'll distract them. He was furious. He wanted to sack Andy on the spot. But you can see the difference, can't you? And we experience these poles of leaders, don't we? So that's where we are with the kind of approach, guys. Be kind to kindness comes from kindness to yourself, kindness to other people. Take personal responsibility for your destiny, if you like, or how you respond and the results you're getting through using kindness and positivity traits. Being mindful of your impact, spontaneous trait transference, and random acts of kindness and all that kind of hypodiatic spread stuff. Mindful that your thoughts aren't real, but everything you create in reality comes from a thought. But knowing that that stuff comes from your internal dialogue means that if you don't like the outputs you're getting, change your internal dialogue, and you can do that. You can do that by reframing how you do that. In terms of how other people affect us, we are the average of the 4 people we spend the most time with, which makes it more critical to be a kind and positive leader. Because even if we're kind and positive by default, most times, if we're working in a bunch of mood hoovers, their negativity will rub off on us. It will rub off on us. And God forbid we're working in a culture around some toxic individuals, and that will definitely rub on us. What we have to do in that scenario is minimize the contact time with mood hoovers and toxic people, or where we have to have contact time with them. We don't let their negativity determine how we feel. Because now with what we've just talked about this afternoon, you now know nobody can make you upset or to doubt yourself without your permission. And what we mean by that is you now know that the circumstances that you're subjected to, 9 times out of 10, you can choose how to respond. It's your response that determines your outcome, not the circumstance. So if you find yourself in an unpleasant scenario, position, environment, situation, and you feel bad about it, what I want you to think about is step outside your body for a minute, look at what's happening, look at yourself being upset in the moment and the individual who's upsetting you, and say, question number 1, does this serve me? Is this going to help me move forward with the issue at hand or whatever's going on? And the answer will always be no. It doesn't serve you because it's negative. Negativity shuts you down. It makes you feel bad. It takes your self-confidence for a dive. Your self-esteem drops. So it will never serve you. But then make the conscious decision to say, I can't change what's just happened because that's gone. But I'm not going to allow that input into my mind to make me feel bad about myself. I'm going to basically delete it, get rid of it, and go on and rethink something in a more kind and positive way. And we have the power to do that just by understanding the couple of little rules that we've spoken about. So, Sumit, you just put something in the chat there. Do you want to just shout out what that was?
No, I was just checking if there is, literature that, I love what you talked about in terms of the act of kindness, the random act of kindness, or the culture of, kindness, and all the different things that goes on in terms of, what's driving what, and what's the root cause then, and what is it that we need to kind of focus more upon. It was a very interesting kind of take. And I was just asking if there is more literature that I could potentially read to know and learn more about it. That's very exciting to just know more and learn more.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Yeah. And we've got Sebastian. Hi. Hello. Pop your camera on. Say hello. Where are you? Oh, you've just come up.
Hi.
Chesterfield Royal. Hi. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. I had lots of great things.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for joining the session. So where are you beaming in from today?
I'm beaming in from my house in Chesterfield. And so I'm a consultant paediatrician, and my work is child protection across Derbyshire. And I'm a Fab ambassador.
Oh, that's brilliant. I was amazed that you come to our little tent today. It's brilliant to see you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for stopping by our kindness and positivity tent here. And so, guys, it's great we've got the session till 5, and it would be great to have a little kind of share experiences in a sec. My day job is to do with service improvement, particularly in the emergency and unscheduled care sector at NHS Improvement. And one of the books I want to share with you, and it does link to kindness and positivity, and I use it a lot. I call it the best improvement story in the world. And I think, hand on heart, I think it really, really is. It's a book called It's Your Ship. It's Your Ship. And it's written by a guy called Mike Abershoff, who happened to be a captain of this ship. And the ship is a United States guided missile destroyer. Has anybody come across this book before? No? So anybody, I tell you what, it's just an amazing book. You need to get it and have a look at it and see what you think. But basically, here, what drew me to it was, so this ship was called the United States Benfold, USS Benfold, guided missile destroyer. It was built shortly before the Gulf War. Mike Abershoff was a captain in training. He was at the Navy Academy, the United States Navy Academy, training to be a captain. And the United States Navy have a bit of a hierarchy thing going on. The people that graduate top of the academy get pretty much a pick of their assignment. They get looked after to some degree, but the people that graduate at the bottom of their cohort get used and abused. Almost as a little penalty for not performing. Anyway, so Mike graduated second to the bottom of his academy in that year. So he was given USS Benfold, which was, as I said, pretty much a brand new ship. It was about 18 months old. But here was the sting in the tail. Benfold was the carrier of nuclear warheads. Here's the other thing. Virtually within 3 months of him getting command of Benfold, they were sending him to the Gulf War loaded with nuclear warheads. And there's only one thing you're going to do with a guided missile destroyer in the middle of a war zone with nuclear warheads on board, and that's sink it. This thing blows countries up. You are not going to allow it to cruise around the ocean for any length of time. So the United States Admiralty had got this plan to basically launch Benfold, get it sunk. Mike's just cannon fodder. He's a low-performing captain. The Admiralty wouldn't have a great loss if they lost Benfold or Mike Abersoff. That was their plan. So did Mike feel valued as a new captain? Probably not. The problem he got is this. Benfold was virtually the worst performing ship in the whole of the United States Pacific Fleet. It couldn't shoot a dead duck out the sky at 30 yards. It got the biggest staff turnover in the history of the United States Navy. It got the highest disciplinary rate. And it was millions of dollars overspent on its annual operating budget every year without exception. Well, it had only been in a year for 18 months or whatever, but it had never brought its budget in. 80% of its crew left the Navy before they were allowed to. So they signed on for 3 years, whatever it was. 80% of the crew left before their enlisting period finished, which meant they faced a fine, criminal prosecution, or both. Within 18 months, USS Benfold broke every single performance record in quality, safety, HR, budget, combat readiness. Every single record that the United States Navy had ever set, without exception. Now I'm thinking, I know what he's done. He's phoned up his friends, his captain friends. He's sacked all the crew. And he's brought in recommended people who are A players, best in class at what they do. And they've gone out to the Gulf War and they've been great. Here's where it really got me interested. I didn't realize that captains of US warships could not choose their staff. They had no say in recruiting their staff. Nobody. Not even their direct reports. They were given their personnel. They had no say on what ship they had, and they had no say on what assignment they got. So with the same crew, in 18 months, Mike Abersoff broke every single record the US Navy had ever set. And It's Your Ship is the story about how he did it. I'm going to spoil it because he did it in two ways, but the joy of reading the book will be how he actually did it in detail. When he took Benfold on, just like the NHS, it got improvement plans, performance improvement plans, regulatory notices on regulatory notices. You must do better. So he didn't really know what to do next. It was his first assignment. He wasn't an experienced captain. But he made two decisions. Decision number one, culture. He wanted to make sure that Benfold was the kind of place where he would be happy for his son and daughter to work. And at the moment, it was command and control, inappropriately. It was command and control. Somebody made the point earlier, is great when you're in a war zone, when you're in a crisis, right? Bastian will tell us, if he's dealing with a cardiac arrest, Rosa, you're the same as a medic. If you're dealing with a cardiac arrest, somebody needs to have command and control and knows who's doing what with what skill set at what time. And has it been done? Has it not been done? Command and control is a good thing at the right place at the right time. Command and control outside of a crisis is just inappropriate and it just shuts people down. It's the wrong thing. So Mike took the view that I want Benfold to be the kind of place that I would be proud for my son and daughter to come and work. So he made it a great place to work, and that was my inspiration for creating NHS Great Place to Work. In NHS Great Place to Work, we asked 2 questions. Question number 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, how great is it to work here? And this is our kindness commitment to our people we work with, our teams. Great place to work, and to me, that's a great thing for you to, one of the things that, you know, we could test out with you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how great is it to work here? If 1 is awful and 10 is awesome. If it's not a 10, question number 2, what do we need to do to make it a 10? This is not the staff survey. This is something that is directly linked to the people that work with us, including us. And it doesn't matter if they talk about, I can't park my car when I come to work, I don't have the time to have a break anytime, the culture's toxic, it doesn't matter what it is. What people will say to us about that response is, they will tell you what's most foremost on their mind. And it's that bit about people get more of what they focus on most. So it's good to know that stuff. The other thing Mike Abishoff did was, there's 110 sailors on the ship, and he met with every single one of the 110 sailors. He brought them into his office. And most of them had never even been in a captain's office before, and they'd worked on the ship ever since they'd been enlisted. And he asked them, if you could change one thing about how you do your job, what would it be? And he wrote them all down on a shopping list. And then he got his 5 heads of command in, 5 heads of division. And a bit like a hospital or healthcare facility, on a Navy warship, they had 5 departments, and every one of those departments had a head of department, right? From catering through to engineering, through to the war room and everything in between, right? And he said to his 5 heads of department, I will judge your capability based on how you work as a collective. I'm going to give you 1 hour to commence a test of change on any idea that our sailors want to check out. 1 hour to start it. During normal operating hours, of course, not sleeping, whatever it is. During the day, if somebody says, boss, I've got an idea, as a head of department, you have 1 hour. And for the first 3 months of his command, his number 1 criteria for judging the success of his heads of department was, how many ideas have come from your sailors? How quickly did you get them into action? I think it's quite interesting to note, he didn't ask how successful the ideas were. His measure for success was, how many ideas have I got coming from the team, and how many of those ideas did we test out within 1 hour, or start within 1 hour? Mike put into action all the feedback from his team, but he only asked them, he closed them down really. He said, I only want 1 idea, because he wanted them to talk about the thing that caused them the most problems, or that they were most excited about, or if you could only stop this boss, it'd be a lot better. The other thing he did to make it reality, you could say, well, that's really good, but people have said to me, the problem with doing that, Paul, is that you will you'll build a rod for your own back, and you'll build expectations that you can't meet. I'll give you an example how he cracked that. And we've got a department called NHS Horizons, and they deliver a school for change agents. And it's a fantastic program, guys. It's free to do. It's a really, really, honestly, as a practitioner, yes, Sebastian, yeah, it is a game changer if you're an improver. It really is. And it focuses on things like positive deviance, boat rocking but not boat sinking, rule breaking, not law breaking, taking the path less travelled, on the basis that if you're dealing in the world of madness and things aren't working, you need to stop, rethink, and do something different. The number 1 thing that came back to Mike when he asked his sailors, if you could change 1 thing about what we do, what would it be? The number 1 thing that came back in terms of a waste of time was painting. They had 4 sailors every day, virtually every day of the year, painting the ship. 4 every day. Mike didn't have the time to get his sailors to train for combat because they were doing stupid things that the Navy was asking them to do. Oh, thanks, Joe. So Mike said, that's great. Thank you for telling us that. How do we stop the painting? And the 22-year-old sailor said to him, boss, we're painting because the fixtures that they use to screw down the guns and the equipment top side on the boat is made of metal that rusts. It's ferrous metal. And the metal rusts and it streaks water down the side of the ship and we have to go and paint it. He said, it's a complete waste of time, boss. And he said, what's your suggestion? He said, well, I want to do a test of change. He said, pick one gun turret, drill out the ferrous metal and replace the fixings with non-ferrous fixings. And I bet we don't need to have to paint that thing for 2 years. Mike said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's do it. He says, right, I'm going to phone the Admiralty up. And phones the Admiralty up, which is what we would know as NHS supplies, healthcare supplies, right? And he said, I want to purchase non-ferrous fixings for a test of change on Benfold. And they came back and said, sorry, Mike, great idea, but you can't do it. So why can't you do it? Because we don't stock them. Why don't we stock them? Well, because they're not on the approved suppliers list of inventory. Well, why aren't they on the approved suppliers list? Because it hasn't come through the Admiralty as a decision. Why can't we put it through the Admiralty? Oh, no, we've got an 18-month, 2-year list of business to work through. And even if we took your idea today, it might be a year to 2 years to get it discussed. And to be quite honest, I don't think it'd go anywhere, so you'd be rejected. Okay. So what did Mike do? Mike had a mindset that we give people through the School for Change Agents. And he decided to be a positive deviant. And this is probably one of my favorite improvement concepts. And it's a commitment to kindness for your people to help them be a positive deviant. Right? They're not lawbreakers. They might be rule breakers, but they're going to get different results for you. What Mike did was decide to be a positive deviant. So he went back to the kid and he said, right, okay, I'm really sorry, but we can't get these rivets for you. We can't get these non-ferrous fixings. I'm really sorry. It was a great idea. And he said, boss, that's really disappointing because you asked us what mattered most to us. And I told you and you can't do anything. He said, well, what would you do if you were me? And he said, funnily enough, boss, he says, my uncle works down in Florida, right? He's got this on the dock, on the port in Florida. He's got a metalworks company and he makes fixings that they use to build ships. If I got hold of him, because they were due to port in Florida for a couple of days, he said, if I got hold of him prior to our port at Florida, he would be able to make some of these things for us. He said, we'd probably only need about 2,000 to do that turret. And he said, Mike said, that's a brilliant idea. Well, we can get in touch with your uncle. And he said, oh, he said, how would I pay for him? He said, you just pay for him, right? He said, okay. So he phoned the Admiralty back and he says, I'm going to buy my own fixings. And they said, no, you're not. You can only purchase stuff from Navy supplies. And if you buy anything, we're going to stop you because you're breaching standard financial instructions. You'll do what we tell you. This is where the positive deviant kicked in and the rule breaking. Did you know that every United States warship has an American Express credit card? Why would you do that? They're the government, aren't they? Why would you need an American Express credit card? Anyway, they do. So Mike took the American Express credit card, which clearly states on it United States Benfold, USS Benfold, United States Navy. And he got hold of this kid's uncle and he gave him his credit card details. And lo and behold, they pulled into Florida and they picked up 2,000 non-ferrous fixings for their turret. They drilled them out. They replaced them in 2 days. They went back to sea. 1 week time. Plan, do, study, act, cycle, test of change, no rust. 1 month later, no rust. Mike phoned up and had another 400,000 things made. He spent thousands of dollars on an American warship credit card that he was told he couldn't use. They cut the time spent on painting by 90%. He took half the time for combat training. He took half the time and he said to his crew, I know you're doing what you're doing now. Question number 1, how can we make you the best radar operator in the United States fleet, if that's what you want to do? Question number 2, where do you see your next job? And what do you need to do in order to get your next job? And he spent the other 50% of the time saved in helping people either become the best possible radar operator, if that's what they wanted to stay doing, or to help them get the experience and qualifications they needed to get their next job. That's how he turned the ship around. Now, he thought he'd just get to acceptable level of proficiency, because he didn't want to get those sailors killed. You can imagine they're all quite young. And he didn't want to be the one, if he was allowed to survive any kind of strike, to be writing the letters to the parents and phoning the parents up saying, thank you for your child service. That's what his motivation. But it just showed you, what did he do then on reflection? I've written a lovely little blog for it, and we must share it actually with you, because I basically said, what would have happened if Mike was in the NHS? And it was talking about that scenario. So for number 1, he created a culture where people enjoyed working. He went to the shop floor and he asked people, what could they change? What would they change if they could? And then he became a positive deviant, and he broke rules to put their ideas into action. Mike's measure of success was how many staff gave up ideas for improvement, and how quickly could his team test those ideas out. It wasn't the outcome of the ideas he was measuring. And by that, he gave people confidence to not fail, but learn, if you know what I mean. Put an idea into action and it didn't give them the results they needed. So Mike's kindness commitment to his team was, I'm going to give you the luxury of testing ideas out and learning from them, because the more ideas we test out and learn from, the more successful we'll ultimately be. And I get that might not be on the first, second, third, or fourth, or fifth attempt. You might have to give something a go 10 times, but he used the model for improvement. Interestingly, Mike Abershoff never had a single day of service improvement and training in his life. Never. That one example of the non-ferrous fixings topside became standard build specification for the whole of the United States Navy. And it would never have happened without what we call in NHS Horizons terms as a change agent. We need kind, positive deviants who value staff and give them permission to get their ideas out of their heads and into action. That's a kindness commitment we give when we go out as a national team and work with people on the shop floor. We give them that commitment. That's a kindness commitment. And that's how we introduce kindness and positivity, to link it with improvement and to help people give the quality of care we'd expect for ourselves and a family. And if it is mayhem and it feels untenable, we are front and center with them. So it's not all about individuals shouldering the pressure that is just intolerable, really. And then they get berated for it. So that's it, guys. That's it. What do you think?
That was fascinating, Paul. Yeah.
Can we sign you up to the Kindness and Positivity Network and, get you involved in some of the stuff we're doing?
Definitely. No, and Paul, that was great. It was a very unexpected story with huge amount of parallels. But I often prefer hearing from other sectors about how you can improve your own sector. I think it was very well done. I also like the observations that Joanna also shared around moving positivity and kindness away from sort of fluffy, nice to haves to metrics that matter. And that's what I've seen in the 2 years that I've been working with TAP. I think even my sort of friends and relatives thought I was doing some happy clappy type thing. And when I started talking to them about metrics around recognition and perception of social care workers or care workers in the UK, and we also work in education as well, and there's a recognition and retention and recruitment issue there as well, they realise that actually what we're doing is actually providing a positive platform that, yes, harnesses the power of gratitude, but actually it's trying to sort of solve a real problem that's out there, a tangible problem and challenge. And I think if you start to talk about it in terms of workforce well-being and retention and recruitment, suddenly even very senior leaders sort of go, oh, right, maybe we should be listening to this. And the only other reflection, just from my experience over the last couple of years, is that we went into this thinking it was all going to be about improving staff well-being in education, healthcare and social care. But of course, the flip side to that is that it's actually improved public engagement or patient engagement, or in the schools environment, parental engagement. It's two sides of the same coin. Yeah. And we're not psychologists, we're not, experts in this field, but what we've seen with our own eyes is that the people that are being thanked are very grateful and happy as a result, but the people that are thanking are just so happy that they've managed to find a way to thank those organizations or those people that they didn't know how to before. So we're happy it's working on both sides, basically. Absolutely.
And if you stop and think for a minute, how many people will hear that story when they're on the end of it? When they're on the end. It's interesting, isn't it? I think when our son's 25 now, but when he was very, very little, about 3, I think, he ended up having something called Rolandic epilepsy. Just for a period of his life, he grew out of it. But for a period of time, the morning he collapsed and started fitting, I was a operational manager in the ambulance service then. You think the worst, don't you? You think, has he got a tumour? What's happening? So call 999. Long and short of it is we were in an acute hospital process then for being scanned and all the rest of it in the middle of Birmingham city centre. One of the things that caused Connor's delay in care was the fact we couldn't move him from hospital to hospital. The chief executive of the ambulance service found out. He's the guy who was made us pick the red phone up in 3 rings. So he got a reputation of tyrant. He sent an ambulance crew out of area into Birmingham to taxi us around the city, just so we didn't have a delay. Because the hospitals were phoning up and saying, we can scan your son if you can get him here within the next 2 hours. And we were losing slots because we couldn't. So my boss phoned me to say, how are you doing? Don't say anything if you don't want to. Don't worry about your job. We'll see you when we see you. Get Connor well. And I said, do you know what? We've missed a scan slot today because we couldn't move him. I got a call the very next morning at 8 o'clock saying there's an emergency ambulance crew sitting outside the front of the hospital. They're yours as long as you want them. Because our chief exec got to find out. When it was my wife's birthday, great big bouquet of flowers come through the post from the chief executive. And, that kind of stuff, particularly when it's very grim and there's very serious things playing out and you're worried a lot and things. First thing I was relieved about, I didn't have to worry about my job because they took that worry away from me. They said, we'll see you when we see you. Don't even think about when you might want to come back. That's fine. And the second thing was, just because he found out that Connor missed an opportunity to be scanned because we couldn't move him from one city hospital to another, he just sent us an emergency ambulance crew and said, that crew's with you while Connor's in hospital. We will always have a crew there for you. And you think, Mark, do you know what I mean? And I was like 20 odd positions down from the chief exec. But he found out, and that's the action he took. And I do think sometimes it's when we're at our most challenging times that people who step up and become part of your team. Now, I didn't like the days he was boarding us out and he used to make us wait to, go through all kinds of discussions and arguments with him over things. That wasn't kind, and he shouldn't have done that. He didn't need to do that. But when things mattered most, and it's interesting because he was a commander in the military. He was part of the Centre for Defence Medicine. So he knew what it was like when things are very difficult and when it comes down to it. And the only thing he could do was to put an ambulance outside that hospital. And he broke rules because technically he should never have done that, because the local ambulance service of the time were responsible for those hospital transfers. So he was a rule breaker. He was a positive deviant. He was a rule breaker. And even though my job was 20 positions beneath his job, he still took the time to ask how I was doing, and he jumped on the thing that was causing me most distress. Bastian?
Sorry, I was late. Your stories have just made me think of something I've experienced recently, and I'm recently accepting that I've got ADHD and go through an assessment process, and that probably explains why I've always been disorganized and chaotic and late with everything. And I've got a very senior position, but I have to, one of the parts of my job is seeing looked after children and doing reports. I'm great at having a conversation, and they tell me all sorts of things that I never told anyone before. And then after I report, which is compiling social care work, GP records, and filling lots of boxes, and they're always late. And I kind of even get to 90%, but then other things distract me, emails and webinars and this and that. And I've had to be kind of performance managed over the last few months, just because, you know, there are timescales these things need to be done on. But my colleague, or the designated doctor for this, has been kind of supporting me in such a kind, compassionate way that is so gentle, and it's been really effective. You know, because I'm used to being told off. I'm used to people sighing and rolling their eyes. I'm used to being kind of threatened, or, you know, if you don't do this, then, you know, you're going to be in big trouble. And it's remarkable the difference. And she's been medical director before. And I am sure she knows exactly what she's doing. And, you know, it kind of got to the point of, oh my God, when it got pretty bad, she was sat beside me. She says, and you also need to take some annual leave. And she got me the form, and she got me to sign it, and she took it to the person who looks after it, and kind of but it was kind of, she was emailing me a summary of kind of what we'd agreed, and meeting me every 2 weeks, and saying kind of, and if you don't get this done by this time, I might have to inform the head of department in order to see if we can make your job different in some way. You know, that's all the kind of performance managed stuff, and, you know, I'm aware of that, but she did it so gently, so kindly that it changed a lot of things in me, and I responded to that, and that's leadership. And
you know,
I haven't had a late report since then.
There you go. And do you know what? I think if you had somebody working for you who was in those tricky times, my guess is you'd be thinking, I know what it feels like to be on the end of that. But I also know what they'll be feeling like if I give them the same kind of response, in terms of, yes, you do have to get a job done. We're all in serious roles, particularly when you're dealing with the safeguarding and children, everything that you and Rosie are involved in. So things do have to get done, but it's how you go about that, isn't it? I think, in terms of, because played that wrong, they could have lost a paediatrician. You could have gone, I'm not having this.
I guess just, I'm aware Joanna's got a hand up, but just, I guess, one final comment, or another, just a brief thing is, I was asked to go and help turn around or create a new system in a failing organization, 2 failing organizations. And, you know, when everyone's beating everyone else, and when there's a toxic sort of environment, it just saps your energy and drains you, you know, and I experienced burnout. And when I've come to this Chesterfield and everyone is kind to each other and looks after each other, it just makes such a difference, and just makes you want to be better.
Yeah. And doesn't all that rank and hierarchy stuff just disappear? Because it's lovely. I mean, often if we're asked to go in as the emergency care improvement team and help support some change in an emergency department area or acute medical process, because it's deemed by the regulators or the performance managers not to be doing what it needs to be doing, I deliberately look at our clinical associates who trained with the people that are working in the department. And you watch what happens when somebody meets somebody that they trained with, they haven't met for 10 years. We have 2 hours of coffee, cake and biscuits, talking about their families, their career, their hobbies. And they walk around inseparably for the 2 days of the improvement event. And it just changes the whole culture from a bullying, blaming, into, gosh, I haven't seen you, Rosie, for 10 years, and we had all that great time together, and we did all this training together, and what are you up to, and what are we going to do now to work this through, and how can I help? And but it's all that personal stuff in it. Joe, step up to the mic. Bless you for being so patient.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh
no, two things. One, I agree with what Sebastian just said, and I think there's such an important thing that is coming out in this conversation around kind policies and kindness within sort of organisational kindness, I guess, isn't it? And it's a way of things like you say, like sickness or parental or bereavement, all those policies that are very sort of black and white in the way they're written, and it's how they're executed and how kind you are in your execution of them that potentially will retain a staff member or will lose them, and also may even damage mental health and irrecoverably damage relationships and teams and everything. It's such a powerful thing. And the other thing, I was speaking to James's point earlier about the sort of the impact of kindness and the wider impact, and I was just thinking of a study that I read, and I'll try and find it and put it in the chat, but it was about kindness, showing kindness to patients going to surgery. And it was looking at anaesthetists and their approach to patient care and their sort of bedside manner, I guess. And what they did was a study of anaesthetists, and they looked at a control group who just did the normal thing, which was to, consent the patient, go through the normal kind of spiel around what's going to happen. And then another group of anaesthetists who added an element of kindness, so human touch. So they just touched the patient's hand, kind of crouched down to their level, explained firstly what their name is, and secondly that this is a procedure. I am going to be there all the time. I'm going to make sure you're not in pain or in any kind of discomfort. I'm here with you. And the outcome of that study showed that those patients, the ones who'd received the kindness approach, which seems soft and fluffy, but actually the measurable outcome of that was that those patients needed 40% less anaesthesia, 40% less pain relief after surgery, and had a much shorter length of stay. So even in terms of very quantifiable patient outcomes, using this approach, as you've explained all afternoon, Paul, so beautifully, it's so powerful, and it's such a long-lasting effect in so many different ways. And I just think that's so powerful for all of us, to emulate and learn from.
I mean, do you know what? It just shows, doesn't it? And I think we could do with more of that in terms of building the case for kindness, I think, in looking at, so it is, we all appreciate from a personal position what kindness means to us, either being kind or being on the end of kindness. But wouldn't it be lovely to put an economic, almost like a benefits analysis around that, to say, right, okay, so we've now got 80% or 90% of our organisation telling us that they feel that they are, for the most part, working in a kind and positive environment, supported by people, to be as good as they can in their job, but also to achieve their potential. And then look at all the other things that kind of matter to us. What happens to your retention? What happens to your complaints, your patient advice and liaison referrals? What happens to your sickness? What happens to the people that want to come and join your organisation? What's the efficiency around it? What's the economic picture around that? And I don't think we've done a lot of that in this country. I'm just mindful I'm running way over, guys. Apologies for that. But the final point I wanted to introduce to you is just on what Joe was saying, is about 15 years ago, the Californian Council decided that they wanted to improve the emotional health and well-being and economy of residents of California. Now I'm thinking palm trees all year round, sun, beaches, what's to improve, right? But they had a lot of socio-economic indicators that they used from a political point of view that were bad, and they wanted to improve that. So they set up the Californian Task Force for Self-Esteem. And they had the best thinking brains in positive psychology and personal development together. And at the end of this think tank kind of initiative, they said, everything boils down to self-esteem. And if we can help people build self-esteem, high self-esteem, the rest will follow. And they set up 27 whole-time equivalents to work in the field of building self-esteem for the people that reside in California. And then over the 5 and 10 years they've been doing it afterwards, they looked at the social, economical outcomes of that in terms of how many people wanted to come and live in California, how many people left California, what was their wealth position like, what was their there's a World Happiness Survey, by the way, if you've never come across it. What was their World Happiness Score? What was happening to children and how children were thriving or not in the community in terms of non-academic and academic results? What was industry doing in terms of profitability and growth, market share, new business? And they tracked the whole thing back over a 10-year period and said, our decision to help people have high self-esteem was their kindness commitment. But they actually put a task force on it. And in all places of California, for goodness sake. So it just goes to show. Now, I think the guys in the States picked up on this a long time ago. And I think we've got some wonderful opportunity in research and development to say, if we take the concept of applied research, wouldn't it be wonderful at an organizational level if to say we're going to set about something that's going to introduce a culture of kindness and positivity. We're not going to get stressed over it because we understand we only need 15 to 20% of people involved before we start getting that law of diffusion kick in. Then we'll get our early adopters in there first, and then we'll get our middle people, and then we'll get our late followers and all the rest of it. And then the laggards will, like Joe said earlier, either get a grip or leave. But so it doesn't have to be, oh gosh, we're trying to solve the world hunger issue. 20% of your organization is what you need. But then say, with no agenda for what the outcomes, a bit like Mike, he didn't have I'm going to let you do this, but you must promise me that. Let's just do it. And then look at the changing, look at what, if anything, changes in the things that are most important to us in terms of leaders, particularly things around, how do our staff feel about coming to work? It's lovely, isn't it? If it's like that picture we started with, if we did a kindness and positivity workshop with Rosie in the north and the ambulance service there in the north, and at the end of it, when we took that photo of the ambulance crew at the start, we tried to do it on iPhones and it never worked because we couldn't ever get a point where they were all off the ground. We went to Medical Illustration and we got one of the super high fast photo cameras that have shutter speeds that are really, really cool, that they use for Medical Illustration. We got a Medical Illustrator photographer down to take that photo, and that's when we caught them with all their feet off the ground at the same time. Now, compare that photo. So if you said all those people work for Team A in Newcastle. Now, if you looked at all the cold corporate indicators around Team A in Newcastle, chances are they're a lot better than all the other teams that don't feel like that. I bet you they turn up for work, their complaints are lower, they stay longer, they get promoted more than any other team. They pull their mates into the organisation and say, come on, work with me, we're having a great time, it's a great organisation to work for. Our boss is brilliant, we get to do some really cool things. I bet you get that culture there, and that's what we need to sprinkle across the organisations, I think. And it'd be a lovely, they call it applied research, it'd be a lovely thing to just test, wouldn't it? Just to say, what would happen if we did that? What would happen? What would be the impact? Just with no expectation or no, we're going to guarantee we get this outcome if we let us do this wacky thing. It'd just be, we're going to do some stuff around kindness and positivity. We're going to make people feel they can take their ideas out of their heads and put them into action through tests of change, model for improvement so we know if a change is an improvement or not. We're going to make people feel valued. We're going to be kind. We're going to support them in their times of need. We're going to be with them, not talking at them. We're going to be with them, sleeves rolled up, helping them through the madness. I just wonder if we did that for a year and then look into that team, talk to them about how does it feel to work here, and that kind of stuff. I just wonder whether or not that's how we start the California Task Force of Self-Esteem social movement within what we do. if anybody would like to have a think about it or have a chat, but you know what, I think we must let you guys escape. And Rosie, you're so quiet. Are you going to give us a few parting words to inspire us and send us on our way?
What? Oops. I'll just share with you what I got today through the post.
Oh.
So in NIAS, we do an annual thing called the T Awards, the Thank You Awards. I think pre-COVID it was done face to face, you know, like a big celebratory event. I never got invited to the T Awards, so that made me feel like nobody really appreciated me because I never got invited to go to this big bash, you know, where it was very much about celebrating probably frontline paramedics who've done amazing things. But because of COVID, it was all done virtually. So last year, every member of staff got a little card with a little pin badge on, as a Superman like pin badge to say thank you, which I thought was really nice. And some people got these cards. You were asked, you know, on the internet to nominate people and send cards. And I sent cards to my team because I thought it was important to thank them for what they were doing. But I didn't get one off my boss. And I was a bit disappointed. And I did say that, you know, what's the point of having a T Awards to say thank you and your boss can't be bothered to say thank you, because naturally he's not that kind of person. So I got this today. The T Awards is on Friday, and I got this today through the post, which is actually from my boss, which did make me feel really nice. So yes, so I think it is quite a positive thing to do, and I think probably somebody told him to do it, but he's done it and he's written really nice things inside it. You know, it's a personalised message inside it to me and my team. So I think that's a nice thing to do, but I think it's what you were saying, James, about having like a regular culture of like recognising what people are doing and kind of saying thank you. And I do try and make a point of that to my team, to thank them when they've done pieces of work or to recognise that a job well done and what have you. So personally, I think I do that. I don't think necessarily it's always all the way through the organisation. We did try and have an online platform where you record kind of appreciations for people, but people just found it too much of a faff to do it. So I think if we are going to have a platform where we record appreciations and thanks to people, it needs to be something really quick and dirty that they can do. The system that we had was piggybacked onto our risk system. Yeah. So it was called Instance and Excellence, and nobody ever did it.
So Rosie, I wouldn't use the word dirty with ours, but it's quick and
sorry, I didn't mean
no. I'm just joking. Because I was going to align what TAP is with what the whole purpose of TAP is, to make it as simple and as easy as possible. We did some research a couple of years ago that suggested in the polls that we did that around 70% of people who wanted to give thanks to their GPs or their teachers or their kids' teachers or doctors and so on and so forth just never got around to doing it because of the busyness of life. You know, maybe that was why your boss didn't send the card the first time around, not because he didn't care, but because he just got busy. And so we have a really simple thing that takes literally about 5 seconds to thank someone through a branded thanking wall. And we've now got an app as well that you can use, but we've designed it to be as simple as possible. I mean, Rosie, if you're interested, I've put my email address in. I think James at Thank and Praise. If you're at all interested, I can send you a little bit of information. We're a social enterprise. It costs nothing, and there's no implementation process at all. I don't mind pitching because it's free.
Yeah, it's good. And you know, the science behind that, Rosie, is basically you putting the concept in the hands of the many, like a social movement, and it's quick and simple. It's accessible, isn't it? And that the science behind it is if we can create accessible, quick, simple ways of doing it. It's a bit like when we said earlier, when you have a great idea, you talk yourself out of it within 5 seconds because you'll find reasons why you can't do it in that moment. Well, so that's the kind of things it's doing. And do you imagine if we had that culture of attitude of gratitude through an organisation, and that it would build momentum, wouldn't it? It would. Guys, would you be, if you want to know a little bit more or have a conversation about joining our Kindness and Positivity Network, which is part of the Fab Academy social movement platform, we'd love to work with you on stuff, and you know, even talk to you about the possibility of, yourself or people around you thinking about being a kindness and positivity coach. Works on the same basis of becoming a FAB ambassador. There isn't any need to go away and study for 8 years to get a degree. It's basically, you've got a mindset, you've got a set of values and principles that you share, and there is the little bit of content which we'll send you in the slide deck, and the coaching sessions we haven't really bottomed out exactly the full extent of what we're going to kind of the course, if you like it loosely.
I mean, Paul, that sounds brilliant. Certainly on behalf of TAP, I'd love to put our hat in the ring and say we'd love to be a part of this in some shape or form. I'd certainly be very happy to be an ambassador. Also, what I should share is that one of my co-directors, a chap called Paddy, is a fully qualified as a mental health first aider. He's obviously not a clinical psychologist, but he actually practices mental health in the workplace as one of his specialities. So he might also be quite a good person to come on board.
Fantastic. And there might be people that, what we'll do is we'll convene a little taster session and just see if anybody's interested and stuff. And then it might be that you go away and have a think about, I'll think about the coaching stuff, or at least learning what those people would be doing, and how to use them in the organisation, and maybe just pick an area for a test of change, or share it with people and just saying, we need to be telling everybody on appointment about some of the things we've spoken about. And the expectation that this is a kind and positive place to be, where we won't promise to be like that all the time because we're human, but it will be the default. And we will make sure that if you want to come and work with us, we will commit to not just valuing you, but helping you reach your potential. But guys, if you want to put your emails in the chat, we'll grab them and we'll be in touch with you if that's all right. We'd love to work with you.
Yeah, I've already put mine in. I'm not.
Oh,
I can't wait, and I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is, but it sounds really important, and
brilliant.
Definitely interested from what I've heard so far.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for taking all the time to join us this afternoon. It's lovely to meet you, and we will be back in touch with you on an ASAP, just to keep momentum going, if that's okay.
Super.
So how long has the work been going? How long have you been working on this, Paul?
I've been working on it really, and I've been using the. I'll get back some more. I'll be off. I've been working on the concepts probably since I've joined NHS Improvement about 3 years ago. But in terms of deploying them in the workplace, and I've kind of got myself in a position now where colleagues at NHSI will ring up and go, I'm struggling with a site, we've got chronic issues in there, it's toxic, can you come in? Not because you know the model for improvement and can test stuff out with us, we want you to come in and build self-esteem, or we want you to come in and talk about it's your ship and build a sense of agency. And it's just gone from there, really.
But this is your personal work rather than a network. But the network is starting right now. Is that what?
That's right. Yeah. So the network, we're launching the network
for Roy and Terry and the ambassadors.
That's it. Yeah. But we're going to offer the network out across the whole of the NHS system. So anybody who's interested in thinking in this kind of way and testing the ideas out, we're going to. But what the Fab Academy is such a wonderful platform to be able to reach out into the NHS as a system. It's just incredible, and the fact is that the principles and value of what we're trying to do in terms of social movement, it fits so well with Fab Academy and Fab Ambassadors. So I wanted to go to Fab Ambassadors first, really, to say this fits so much, cultural improvement points of view, really, and create an environment for improvement.
So it's not just about being kind to people, but it's about kindness and model for improvement and making change. So it's not just okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the kind of key thing is, it stems from this point that every patient and service user deserves the quality care that we'd expect for ourselves and our family. And whilst we can't physically deliver that all the time everywhere, you know, the mindset of the Fab Ambassadors is we're going to do stuff to get us closer to that. And all kinds of positivity stuff does is creates the environment, the kind of cultural, psychological environment to do that. So it's the same goals that we're pursuing, really, just from a psychological point of view.
Yeah, no, that's really inspiring. And
oh, bless you. You're too kind, guys. You're too kind. We're definitely going to get you
involved. I speak very highly of you, and I'm pleased you turned up today. This is the first year I've not been actively involved. I'm not really been actively involved in Change Day, and but you know, maybe this is because the universe has brought us together for some reason.
That's what I think. And James, thank you so much for turning up and contributing in the way you have.
It's been fascinating, and I have to say, when I saw on the agenda a few days ago, kindness and positivity was on there. I thought I need to make a beeline for this one, and I like what I'm hearing. So,
and I think a huge thanks really to Danny and Terry, because this is a little bit off piste, this stuff. And when I first suggested it to them, it was and not only but you're going to have your own tent if you want it, and you can have as much time as you want on the day. And I'm thinking, wow, brilliant. So Danny, bless you for pulling it all together and making it a reality. You've been amazing, absolutely amazing. So
can I take a quick photo of us, a little as a souvenir? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for making
nice to meet you, Sebastian. I'm sure we'll connect again. And thanks, Danielle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.